All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Joan, for the introduction. My name's Kate Sherman. I work for the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission based out of Portland, Oregon. But I help with PMEP's GIS data, so that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And before we get into the data, I just want to say, I'm sure Joan mentioned this in the beginning, but PMEP is one of 20 recognized fish habitat partnerships across the nation. We have a few on the West Coast here, the Pacific Lamprey Conservation Initiative and the California Fish Passage Forum, along with others in Alaska and Hawaii. So I encourage you all to check those out. And of course, this is a presentation about PMEP's data, and I'm here really to talk about PMEP's spatial data and how we try to fill high priority data gaps in understanding fish habitats along the west coast of Oregon, Washington, and California. One of the really nice things about PMEP and its data sets are they all build upon each other. And so here's a list of some of the reports that we have. And all of these reports come with complementary spatial data sets, and they're all available on our website. But we've really started in the estuaries, which is what I'm going to focus on today, and then have moved more recently out into the nearshore. And we've started with classifying estuaries along the West Coast by type, and then built into more information on juvenile use in those estuaries, the nursery functions, getting into specific habitat types like eelgrass and tidal wetlands, and then looking into restoration of those habitat types. And all of the data that we'll talk about today is part of what we think of as this West Coast spatial framework. And we use the Coastal Marine and Ecological Classification Standard, CMEX, to look at the data. And so all of the habitat types are using CMEX all the way from estuaries into the near shore, so we can really compare and contrast up along the West Coast and from within estuaries out into the near shore. And I know the last presentation mentioned CMEX, and it's really it's recognized by the FGDC as a federal standard for classifying coastal and estuarine habitats. So this is a huge portion of PMEP's data is in West Coast estuaries, and it's really been an evolution that brought us here, where we currently have 444, a nice clean number of estuaries on the West Coast, but it didn't start out that way. We started with this inventory and classification, using information on estuaries from a variety of sources, including some ground truthing in California. And then those were really our guiding documents where we wanted to promote consistency of methods and terminology coast-wide. And this was really kind of a foundation layer. And we classified the estuaries by type, and then also looked at kind of the state of the knowledge of juvenile fish species. And then we wanted to basically standardize this list of estuaries. So we followed methods developed by the Oregon Coastal Management Program to map what we call the current and historical extent of estuaries, using models of extreme water level and LIDAR, something we refer to as the 50% exceedance methodology. And it's really just this elevation-based methodology to look at the current and historic extent of estuaries along the whole West Coast. And this is where we got the list of 444 estuaries. So we took the methods developed by Oregon and we expanded that into Washington and California. And so this map that you're seeing is really the 444 estuaries classified by type. And within each estuary, we've used data that was available along the West Coast to classify habitats using CMEX. We also have focal species, juvenile presence, and presence within those estuaries. And we've also dove a little bit deeper into specific habitat types and have an eelgrass maximum observed extent data set. And then because of this West Coast-wide data set, we were able to do a rapid tidal wetland loss assessment within certain estuaries across the West Coast. And really, the final result and the resources that these provide is a standardized coast-wide data set for comparing and contrasting biotic habitat, wetland loss, and other information relative to fish habitat along the West Coast. So I mentioned this tidal wetland loss assessment, and this was done for 55 estuaries, which sounds like a really small portion of the 444, but it actually captured the vast majority of the historic West Coast tidal wetlands by area, 97%. And so for this, we compared the estuary extent developed by that 50% exceedance methodology with NWI, the National Wetlands Inventory, which we considered the best representation of kind of current tidal wetlands. And we focused on estuaries with greater than 100 hectares and got this tidal wetland loss assessment. And our first result of this, when we were QA/QCing, we realized that there were some areas in there that were considered lost because of the timing of the elevation-based methodology, but that had actually been restored. And so we've also incorporated restored areas into this. We have data from that Christina mentioned earlier. I saw a presentation last week on their data set that they call the pitworm. So really appreciated that acronym. And so restored area, tidal wetland restored areas data sets from across the West Coast were incorporated into this tidal wetland loss assessment, so we can start to see where those areas that were lost have been restored, and that's what this map is showing you. And we're actually in the process of updating this, and that data will be released this summer. I mentioned specific eelgrass resources, so we have spatial data representing the maximum observed extent of eelgrass across the West Coast. And basically what that means is that all data mapping the extent of eelgrass across the West Coast within an estuary over time are compiled to represent this maximum observed extent, which is really something that we can consider a potential area for eelgrass because we've observed eelgrass there before. So that's a nice resource. And I'm also updating that and hope to release that this summer as well. And then another nice resource, all of these are available on our website, and I'll show that a little bit more soon, is the eelgrass restoration synthesis report, but also there's a complementary table summarizing different methods, and this is the table shown here on the right. Another resource available is this Barriers to Tidal Connectivity Hub, and this was actually a collaboration between 3 fish habitat partnerships, Pacific Lamprey Conservation Initiative, California Fish Passage Forum, and PMEP. And we looked to basically bring in all of the publicly available data on potential barriers to tidal connectivity. So you can look at these in this web application organized by barrier type. So all the publicly available dams data, levees, data sets on basically tidally restricted areas. So, and you can also add your own data into this if you're thinking about restoration and want to look at all the barriers in context. This is a nice resource. There's also another data hub that lists a variety of reports and also presentations from a previous PMEP Barriers to Tidal Connectivity symposium that we had a few years ago. And a huge portion of PMEP are our partners. I mean, we really are a partnership. And not only do we have PMEP's data on our website, but some of the foundational partner data is also available. So data for the Columbia River, habitat maps using CMEX, an Oregon tidal wet, comparing historic losses of tidal wetlands in Oregon, and then some landward migration zone data for Oregon as well. And just an example of some of how some of PMEP's data has been used in Puget Sound is the Puget Sound vital signs, estuary vital sign, looking at basically the potential estuary using PMEP's current and historic extent, and then areas that are disconnected, and then areas that are potential estuary that could be restored. So that's a nice way that this has been used to track estuary restoration and plan for future restoration. So moving a little bit outside of estuaries, I know this is an estuary focus, but there's obviously a huge connection to the nearshore, particularly in Puget Sound. And PMEP has also completed a nearshore habitat data sets and report. And we, similar to our process for estuaries, we classify the nearshore into ecoregions and subregions, into depth zones, and then into habitats. And right now we have substrate and biotic components. And then it's all summarized in a report by focal invertebrates and fish species. So this is a huge mega report that's available on our website, but it also has complementary data. And these are just two maps highlighting the biotic and substrate component. And you can start to look at the different biotopes or how habitats overlap in perspectives of how fish use habitats in the near shore. And what's really nice is I mentioned the spatial framework. We're now starting to get into connectivity of habitat classification from estuaries into the near shore. And this is an example of the Columbia River substrate habitat data set and substrate data moving into the near shore. One of the ways the substrate data for the near shore is being used is in the Rocky Reef Spatial Data Update. So NOAA Fisheries and the Pacific Fishery Management Council identified a need to update their spatial data for the Rocky Reef habitat area of particular concern. So this is currently being updated, and actually we're putting together a publication that will also be out this year, but the spatial data will also inform an upcoming review by the Pacific Fishery Management Council of ground fish essential fish habitat beginning this year. So we've been involved in that as well. And all of these data sets are available on PMEP's website, pacificfishhabitat.org/data. And we have a variety of resources. We have a couple applications where you don't need to have desktop GIS to interact with our data. You can use the estuary and nearshore habitat viewer to check out our data, or the Estuaries Explorer, which is a really quick way to compare and contrast data. You can also download all of our data to use in your desktop GIS software. And we also have web services where you can bring in data to your applications to show PMEP's data. So all of these are available on our website. And here is just a highlight of the nearshore viewer where you can look at PMEP substrate data. There's a variety of tools, charts to summarize information, filter information, bring in your own data, and you can actually draw on the map and export a PDF of your map. And so these are all really great resources to use that are all available online. And I do work for the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. So all of the data for PMEP and PSMFC is available in the ArcGIS Online Geo platform. So it's also available for you to use in any Esri ArcGIS Online tool as well. And here are some of PSMFC's other data sets that are part of our Geo platform. And if you'd like to learn more, we also have data training opportunities. We partner with the National Estuarine Research Reserve System to host trainings about twice a year. We've hosted trainings with Padilla Bay and South Slough, and we're planning on an upcoming one with the Tijuana River Nair. So I encourage you all to check those out. But also, if you want to learn more right now, we've recorded some how-to videos to supplement these hands-on training, and they are also available on PMEP's website. So go and check those out. They're nice short videos. And that's it from me. Thank you so much. Feel free to email me if you have any questions, and check out our website and our data resources.